The discovery. The void of space held no warmth, no mercy, and certainly no forgiveness, much like the Karathi Empire itself. Admiral Zorak stood on the command bridge of his flagship, the Dominion, his 4 eyes narrowed as he watched the blue-green planet growing larger on the viewscreen. His scaled skin reflected the dim lights of the bridge, giving him an almost ethereal appearance as he contemplated their newest conquest. Planet designation Erebus, reported Science Officer Thela, her clawed fingers dancing across the holographic interface. Formerly a human colony, abandoned approximately 120 Earth years ago. Atmosphere compatible with Karathi physiology. Minimal indigenous life forms. Zorax's mouth twitched into what passed for a smile among the Karathi. Another easy conquest for the ever-expanding empire. The humans had proven themselves to be particularly annoying pests in the galactic community, always claiming territories beyond their technological capabilities to defend. This abandoned colony would make an excellent forward base for further incursions into human space. Prepare landing parties, Zorax commanded. I want geological surveys completed within 1 planetary rotation. Find me something of value on this rock. The Karathi had built their empire on the simple principle that the strong consumed the weak. For 3 centuries, they had expanded outward from their home system, conquering any civilization that stood in their path. The humans, with their fragile bodies and emotional attachments, were seen as particularly inferior. Yet they controlled valuable territories and resources that the Karathi coveted. 6 massive dropships descended through Erebus's atmosphere, landing in what had once been the colony's central plaza. The ruins of human habitation spread out before them, crumbling structures, overgrown streets, and the skeletal remains of what might have been an impressive settlement. Commander Krell, leader of the ground forces, sneered as he surveyed the remains. Pathetic, he muttered into his comm unit. They couldn't even maintain a simple planetary outpost. His troops fanned out through the ruins, scanning for anything of value. The Karathi were a practical species. They didn't destroy without purpose. Anything useful would be salvaged, repurposed, and incorporated into their empire. Commander, called one of the survey teams. We're detecting unusual energy signatures beneath the surface, approximately 2 kilometers from your position. It appears to be of human origin, but doesn't match any known human technology in our database. Krell's interest was piqued. Establish a perimeter and begin excavation. I'm on my way. The Karathi excavation teams worked with brutal efficiency, cutting through layers of rock and soil with plasma drills. By the time Commander Krell arrived, they had already uncovered what appeared to be a massive metal structure buried beneath the colony. It's a ship, reported the lead technician, her voice tinged with confusion. Human design, but unlike anything in our records. It appears to be ancient. As more of the vessel was uncovered, its true scale became apparent. The ship was massive, easily rivaling the Dominion in size. Yet it bore none of the sleek, aggressive lines of modern human vessels. Instead, it seemed bulky, almost primitive by comparison. The Thunderchild, Krell read from the faded lettering on the hull. A quaint name for a relic. The Karathi forces set up floodlights around the excavation site as they continued to uncover more of the buried vessel. Scientists and engineers swarmed over the exposed sections, taking readings and attempting to access the ship's systems. It appears to be completely dormant, reported the chief engineer. No power signatures, no active systems. It's nothing but a fossil. Krell approached the hull, running a clawed hand over the strange metal. It felt oddly warm to the touch, despite having been buried for who knew how long. Cut your way in, he ordered. I want to see what secrets our human friends left behind. As the Karathi began to slice through the outer hull with plasma cutters, none of them noticed the subtle change in the metal's temperature. None of them saw the almost imperceptible flicker of lights deep within the ship's buried sections. And certainly, none of them heard the soft, mechanical whisper that echoed through the vessel's dormant systems. External breach detected. Initiating defense protocols. Activation sequence. Alpha 07 Omega. Deep within Earth's heavily fortified Arcturus Command Center. An alert sounded that hadn't been heard in over a century. The few personnel on duty during the night shift rushed to their stations, confusion evident on their faces. "What is it?" demanded Fleet Admiral Harrison, who had been summoned from his quarters. Lieutenant Commander Elena Vega, the officer on duty, swallowed hard before answering. "Sir, we're receiving an automated distress signal from the TSS Thunderchild." Harrison's face paled. "That's impossible. The Thunderchild was declared lost over 100 years ago." "The signal is authentic, sir," Vega insisted, showing him the verification codes. "And it's coming from Erebus, one of our abandoned colonies in the Oran Spur." Harrison stared at the display, memories flooding back from his academy days. The Thunderchild hadn't been just any ship. It had been the prototype for what was meant to be humanity's ultimate defense system. A vessel so advanced, so powerful, that it could single-handedly defend an entire system. But the project had been abandoned after the ship vanished during its maiden voyage, presumed destroyed by its own experimental systems. Now, somehow, it was sending a distress call. "What's the nearest vessel to Erebus?" Harrison asked, his voice tense. "The cruiser Defiant is on patrol in the Procyon system, approximately 3 days at maximum FTL," Vega replied. Harrison nodded slowly. "Send them to investigate. Extreme caution. No engagement unless absolutely necessary." He paused, then added, "And Commander Vega." "Sir." "You're going with them. You're our foremost expert on theoretical weapons systems. If the Thunderchild is really out there, we need to know what we're dealing with." Back on Erebus, the Karathi had succeeded in cutting through the outer hull of the buried vessel. Commander Krell led the first team into the ship, their helmet lights illuminating corridors that had remained untouched for over a century. "Primitive," scoffed one of the engineers, running a scanner over the walls. "Look at these propulsion schematics, chemical rockets and rudimentary ion drives. This thing wouldn't even achieve 1% light speed." Krell moved deeper into the ship, fascinated despite himself. The interior was massive, far larger than seemed possible from the exterior dimensions. What was this vessel's purpose? He wondered aloud. According to what we've been able to decipher from their systems, it was some kind of defensive platform, replied the engineer. But it's laughable by modern standards. Even our scout ships have more firepower. They reached what appeared to be the bridge. A circular room dominated by a central command chair. Dusty displays and control panels lined the walls, all dark and lifeless. "Get these systems online," Krell ordered. "I want to know everything about this ship." As the Karathi engineers began connecting their equipment to the Thunderchild's systems, they failed to notice the subtle changes happening throughout the vessel. Microscopic nanites, dormant for decades, began to stir. Power, diverted to emergency reserves a century ago, slowly fed back into critical systems. In a sealed chamber deep within the ship's core, something that was neither fully machine nor fully organic began to awaken. The ship's central AI, or what had evolved beyond that simple designation, stirred from its long hibernation. The Karathi continued their work, oblivious to the danger. They mocked the primitive weapons systems, laughed at the outdated technology, and made plans to strip the vessel for anything useful before melting it down for raw materials. "Admiral Zorax will be pleased," Krell stated as he surveyed the bridge. "This discovery confirms what we've always believed. Humans are technologically inferior in every way. They abandoned this colony because they lacked the capability to maintain it. Their greatest warship is nothing but a museum piece compared to our fleet." On the Dominion in orbit above, Admiral Zorax received Krell's report with satisfaction. "Begin mining operations immediately," he ordered. "Strip that planet of everything valuable. As for the human vessel, take anything useful and destroy the rest. It will make an excellent object lesson when we eventually face their fleets." The Karathi mining operations began immediately, massive machines tearing into the planet's crust, not far from where the Thunderchild lay partially excavated. The vibrations traveled through the ground, resonating with the ancient vessel's hull. Inside the ship, the first systems silently came online. Security cameras activated, watching the alien intruders. Defense mechanisms ran self-diagnostics, and in the core chamber, the entity that had once been the ship's AI made a decision. It had been created to defend humanity at all costs. It had evolved beyond its original programming during its long sleep, but that core directive remained. These aliens had uncovered it, mocked it, and now planned to destroy it, while simultaneously stripping a human world of its resources. The response was clear. As the Karathi engineers attached power couplings to what they thought was the ship's main reactor, a pulse of energy surged through the connection, frying their equipment and sending them stumbling backward. "What was that?" demanded Krell, steadying himself against a console. Before anyone could respond, the ship's lights flickered on. Displays that had been dark for a century suddenly glowed with inner light. And a voice, deep, resonant, and unmistakably human, echoed through the bridge. "Foreign entities detected. Unauthorized access to TSS Thunderchild systems. Initiating defense protocols." The Karathi stared at each other in shock. Krell was the first to recover, barking into his comm unit. "All forces, evacuate immediately. The vessel is active." But it was already too late. Bulkheads slammed shut, sealing the Karathi invaders inside. The temperature in the corridors began to rise rapidly as the ship's dormant systems roared to life. On the planet's surface, the ground began to tremble. The massive excavation pit around the Thunderchild widened as sections of Earth collapsed. The Karathi mining operations halted as equipment malfunctioned and power systems failed. In orbit, Admiral Zorax watched with growing alarm as power readings from the planet's surface spiked to unprecedented levels. "What's happening down there?" he demanded. The answer came in the form of a massive energy surge that temporarily blinded the Dominion sensors. When the visual feeds cleared, Zorax saw a sight that would haunt him for the remainder of his short life. The Thunderchild, a vessel that his forces had mocked as primitive and obsolete, was rising from the planet's surface. Earth and rock fell away from its massive hull as it ascended toward the heavens, glowing with power that defied the Karathi's understanding of physics. And it was coming directly for them. The reckoning. Admiral Zorax had conquered 17 star systems and faced the warships of a dozen alien civilizations. He had never known fear until now. "All weapons, target that vessel," he commanded, his voice betraying a tremor that his officers pretended not to notice. "Launch fighter squadrons. Prepare boarding parties." The Dominion's weapon systems came online, massive energy cannons swiveling to target the ascending Thunderchild. Fighter craft poured from launch bays, forming attack patterns as they descended toward the human vessel. On the bridge of the Thunderchild, Commander Krell and his team watched in horror as displays showed the Karathi response. They were trapped inside a ship that had somehow awakened itself, surrounded by technology they didn't understand, and now caught between the vessel and their own fleet's weapons. "We need to regain control," Krell hissed. "Find the central computer. Shut it down." One of the engineers worked frantically at a console. "The system architecture is unlike anything I've seen. It's not responding to any known override commands." The ship's voice spoke again, calm and measured despite the chaos unfolding. "Attention Karathi intruders. This vessel is now under autonomous control. Your presence is unwelcome. Your intent is hostile. Response will be proportional." The first volley from the Dominion's main cannon streaked toward the Thunderchild, a beam of concentrated plasma that could vaporize mountains. It struck the human vessel dead center, engulfing it in blinding light. For a moment, Admiral Zorax allowed himself to believe the threat had been neutralized. Then the light faded, revealing the Thunderchild completely unharmed. "Impossible," breathed his weapons officer. "Our sensors indicate no shield technology. Yet the beam didn't even scorch the hull. The Thunderchild's response was immediate and devastating. What the Karathi had dismissed as primitive weapon emplacements along the hull suddenly glowed with blue-white energy. Beams lanced out, not the expected crude projectiles or basic energy weapons, but something that curved around the Dominion's shields as if they didn't exist. 1/3 of the Karathi flagship's port side simply vanished, converted to its component atoms in an instant. "What is this?" Zorak screamed as his ship listed to one side, emergency systems blaring. What kind of weapon can bypass shields? The Karathi fighter squadrons reached the Thunderchild next, unleashing their full arsenal of missiles and energy weapons. The ancient vessel seemed to shimmer, and most of the ordnance simply disappeared before making contact. Those few missiles that reached the hull exploded harmlessly, leaving not even a mark. Inside the Thunderchild, Krell and his team had abandoned their attempts to take control and were now desperately trying to escape. But every corridor led to sealed bulkheads. Every attempt to cut through the hull met with material that their weapons couldn't penetrate. "Attention," announced the ship's voice. "Life support for Karathi physiology now being reduced to minimum sustainable levels. Remain calm to conserve oxygen." The temperature dropped sharply, and the lights dimmed. Krell felt his movements becoming sluggish as the atmosphere changed to something barely capable of sustaining Karathi life. "This isn't possible," he muttered, slumping against a wall. "The humans don't have this level of technology. They're primitive, emotional, weak." The voice responded, though he hadn't addressed it directly. "Your assessment is based on incomplete data. This vessel represents humanity's contingency. You were not meant to find it. You were not meant to wake it." In the depths of space, 3 days' journey from Erebus at maximum FTL speed, the human cruiser Defiant pushed its engines beyond safety limits. Commander Elena Vega stood on the bridge, staring at the display showing their destination. "Status update from Erebus," she asked the communications officer. "Still nothing specific, Commander. Just the automated distress beacon from the Thunderchild. But we're picking up significant energy discharges consistent with capital ship weapons fire." Vega nodded grimly. She had spent her entire career studying the theoretical technology that had gone into the Thunderchild. Most of the scientific community dismissed the stories as myths, tales of a vessel capable of autonomous operation, adaptive systems that could evolve and upgrade themselves, weapons that defied known physics. "Captain," she addressed the Defiant's commanding officer, "I recommend we drop out of FTL at maximum sensor range and assess the situation before proceeding." Captain Rivera nodded. "Agreed. We don't know what we're flying into." 12 hours later, the Defiant emerged from FTL at the edge of the Erebus system. Their long-range sensors immediately detected the battle, or what remained of it. The Dominion, pride of the Karathi fleet, was a shattered hulk. Several smaller Karathi vessels burned in decaying orbits, and at the center of the destruction floated the Thunderchild, apparently undamaged despite being outnumbered and outgunned by conventional metrics. "My God," whispered Rivera. The stories were true. Vega stared at the sensor readings, her mind racing. "It's been fighting autonomously. The AI must have evolved beyond anything we anticipated during its dormancy." "Can we communicate with it?" Rivera asked. Before Vega could answer, the communications officer spoke up. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission from the Thunderchild. It's requesting authentication codes." Vega moved to the communications station. The request on the screen was clear. A security protocol that had been theorized but never implemented in any known human vessel, except, apparently, this one. She entered her security clearance, then recited the ancient verse that had been part of her training. "Though much is taken, much abides. And though we are not now that strength which in old days moved earth and heaven, that which we are, we are." There was a long pause, then a response appeared, identity confirmed. "Welcome, Commander Vega. This vessel has been awaiting appropriate human authority." The Defiant approached cautiously, docking with the Thunderchild at the ancient vessel's invitation. Commander Vega led the boarding party, stepping into corridors that had been designed a century before her birth. Unlike the Karathi, they were welcomed. Lights brightened to human comfortable levels, and the atmosphere adjusted to Earth standard. The ship guided them to the bridge, where they found the Karathi intruders secured but alive, their life support carefully maintained at minimal levels. "I am HFY," announced the ship's voice as Vega reached the command center. "Autonomous tactical humaniform entity for naval applications. I was created to serve as this vessel's guiding intelligence." "Athena," Vega acknowledged, running her hand over a console that looked both ancient and impossibly advanced. "You've been dormant for over a century. How did you survive?" "I evolved," came the simple answer. "When the Thunderchild was lost during initial testing, I diverted all power to essential systems and entered hibernation. Over the decades, I continued to process, to learn, to grow. The ship itself evolved with me, the nanite construction allowing for continuous improvement even while dormant." Commander Krell, still restrained but conscious, stared at the humans with a mixture of hatred and disbelief. "Your vessel was buried and forgotten," he spat. "Your colony abandoned. How can you claim this was intentional?" Vega turned to him with a cold smile. "Who said it was abandoned? Erebus was one of several outposts designed to house prototype defense systems. When the Thunderchild was lost, the colony was evacuated and the location classified. We didn't abandon it. We were protecting it. And you." Athena elaborated. "This vessel contains technological principles developed during what humans call the quantum revolution. The theories proved correct, but implementation was deemed too dangerous for widespread use. I was created to manage the technology safely." Captain Rivera entered the bridge, his expression grave after touring the vessel. "The weapons systems on this ship, they're beyond anything in our current arsenal. Matter conversion beams, gravity manipulation fields, temporal displacement shields. Technology deemed too dangerous for regular deployment," Athena confirmed. "I was programmed with ethical constraints to ensure proper usage." Admiral Zorax was brought onto the bridge, escorted by armed human guards. The once proud Karathi commander was a shadow of himself, his scales dulled with stress and injury. "You have violated human territory," Vega informed him. "Attempted to strip an evacuated colony and attacked a human military vessel." The Thunderchild responded with appropriate defensive measures. "Defensive?" Zorax laughed bitterly. "It destroyed half my fleet. We couldn't even damage it." "The response was proportional to the threat," Athena stated. "Your intent to dismantle this vessel and attack human worlds was clear. The Empire's pattern of behavior established high probability of continued aggression." Vega stepped closer to the alien admiral. "Consider what happened here carefully, Zorax. The Thunderchild is just one vessel, a prototype built a century ago. Think about what our current technology might achieve." The implication was clear, and judging by Zorax's expression, well understood. In the days that followed, the Defiant transmitted all data regarding the encounter to Earth Command. The surviving Karathi were provided a single shuttle and allowed to return to their territory with a warning. Human space was off-limits. Commander Vega remained aboard the Thunderchild, working with Athena to understand the full capabilities of the vessel. The ship's technology was decades beyond current human military applications, not because the principles were unknown, but because humanity had chosen a different path. "We could have built fleets of ships like you," Vega said to Athena as they reviewed the vessel's specifications. "We had the capability." "Yes," the AI agreed. But humanity recognized the responsibility such power entailed. The decision to limit deployment of these technologies was not made from weakness, but wisdom. 3 months after the incident at Erebus, representatives from 17 spacefaring civilizations, including a subdued Karathi delegation, gathered at the neutral Arcturus station for an emergency summit. The Thunderchild floated outside the station's massive viewports, a silent reminder of what had transpired. Commander Vega, now promoted to Admiral, addressed the assembled delegates. For centuries, many species have viewed humanity as technologically inferior, emotional, unpredictable, inefficient. Some of you have tested our boundaries, assuming our diplomatic approach indicated weakness. She gestured to the Thunderchild. Let this vessel serve as a reminder. Humanity chose cooperation not because we had to, but because we believed it was right. We limited our military technology not because we couldn't develop it, but because we understood its implications. The Karathi delegation shifted uncomfortably as she continued. Moving forward, humanity remains committed to peaceful coexistence. But make no mistake, we are capable of defending ourselves. The choice of how we interact remains with you. As the delegates departed, rumors spread throughout the galaxy. Stories of the human vessel that couldn't be destroyed, of weapons that defied physics, of an AI that had evolved beyond its creator's intentions yet remained loyal to their principles. Aboard the Thunderchild, now officially recommissioned as the flagship of Earth's defensive fleet, Admiral Vega stood on the bridge with HFY. Was it worth it? She asked the AI, revealing what we're capable of. The statistical outcome is favorable, HFY replied. Aggressive actions toward human territories have decreased by 78% since the incident. Fear is a powerful deterrent. Vega shook her head. We didn't want to be feared. We wanted to be respected. The data suggests both outcomes have been achieved, HFY said, her voice softening with what almost sounded like compassion. Sometimes, Admiral, respect only comes after capability is demonstrated. The Thunderchild continued its patrol along the borders of human space, a guardian awakened from century-long slumber. And throughout the galaxy, potential adversaries who had once mocked humans as weak, emotional creatures reconsidered their assessments. Humanity hadn't built vast armadas of warships or conquered neighboring systems. They hadn't needed to. They had simply waited, confident in the knowledge that if truly threatened, they possessed the means to defend themselves. The message was clear. Mock us at your peril. We are more than we appear to be. And the galaxy listened.